Dennis, the last time we had you on the show in May, you said that you think we're 5 to 10 years away from AGI and that there might be a few significant breakthroughs needed between here and there. Has Gemini 3 and observing how good it is changed any of those timelines, or does it incorporate any of those breakthroughs that you thought would be necessary?
No, I think it's sort of dead on track. If you see what I mean, we're really happy with this progress. I think it's an absolutely amazing model, and is right on track of what I was expecting and the trajectory we've been on actually for the last couple of years since the beginning of Gemini, which I think's been the fastest progress of anybody in the industry. And I think we're going to continue doing that trajectory, and we expect that to continue. But on top of that, I still think there'll be one or two more things that are required to really get the consistency across the board that you'd expect from a general intelligence, and also improvements still on reasoning, on memory, and perhaps things like world model ideas that you also know we're working on with Simmer and Genie. They will build on top of Gemini, but extend it in various ways. And I think some of those ideas are going to be required as well to fully solve physical intelligence and things like that. So I'm both are true. I'm really happy with the progress of Gemini 3. I think people are going to be pretty pleasantly surprised. But it's on track of what we were expecting the progress to be. And I think that means still 5 to 10 years with one or two more, perhaps.
There are some things that I have an unconventional maybe opinion on that maybe some other people might not think about. I won't speak for other people, but I do think that one of the premise that we deeply believe in reflection, how fundamentally important the coding problem is, and specifically autonomous coding, the ability for an AI system to autonomously code something on a computer and kind of go from task to something that's completed and give that to the user. I think it's a common way to think about such systems is that they're going to be useful for software engineers. That makes sense. Coding is that software engineers do. A point of view that I have, and it's not just myself, but our team at Reflection, is that coding is going to transcend software engineering. It's going to go much further beyond that and touch basically every other piece of work, category of work on a computer. And the reason for that is that when we think about how a language model is going to do work on a computer, we have to think about what is its embodiment? What is the natural way for a language model to interface with a computer? Effectively, what are its hands and legs? For people, we have really strong spatial priors that were evolved through millions of years of evolution. And so we have hands, we're dexterous, and we have really good kind of innate spatial reasoning. We're born with it. Language models don't have that. They were never evolved. They were trained on the internet. And so what's intuitive to us is not intuitive to them. Like they don't have the spatial reasoning that we do. But what's intuitive to them is coding. There's a lot of code on the internet. And the same way that we can very easily, almost trivially, without thinking about it, reason spatially about objects, language models are that way with code. It's just intuitive to them. And so when we think about like, what is the way in which a language model interacts with any piece of software in the future? Likely not going to be by moving a mouse around like humans do and using the human UI. It's probably going to be through code. Most pieces of software we think will open up these language-friendly UIs or interfaces, and they're going to be mostly programmatic. A thing that we believe that maybe not deeply internalized yet, but it is definitely internalized by some, is that if you solve autonomous coding, you solve intelligence on a computer, and it transcends software engineering. I think as I started spending more time in AI, I think the ambition of what we'll be able to achieve, not me personally necessarily, but as a field, and this is something that personally drives me to be a part of, is that we are on the cusp of building a general superintelligence. Even a few years ago, this would have sounded like complete science fiction, but this is going to be the most impactful technology of our time. And it's hard to say, well, what the world will look like after it, but it's hard for me to imagine being part of anything more impactful or exciting from a scientific perspective. I think this is not necessarily even a nice to have. This is kind of a property of this that is pretty remarkable, is that it's not just research, it's not just science in a vacuum. These systems are really useful today. And you kind of co-develop, instead of having to wait 3 decades to see your science have the impact that you're looking for, you're kind of co-developing the science and the product together. That's what drives me. It's the mission of building superintelligence, because it is the impactful science of our time, and the luck, I would say, that we have it, that this research is useful today. My worldview on how humans interact with AIs as these systems become superintelligent and start impacting the labor market are coming from a position that this is not a zero-sum game. It's not like there's a fixed quantity of labor that either a human does or someone else does. Each time there's been a technological advance, it actually just increased the amount of things we could produce. With intelligence, that increase is the amount of ideas and theories and experiments and software that you can build. What I think the world looks like a few years from now, as these systems start becoming extremely capable, is that they kind of lift everything up, and we end up creating in almost every field of computer-based work, and in the future also physical work, we end up creating an order of magnitude more, or even more than that. You know, it's hard. I think it's at least an order of magnitude more than we're capable of creating today. What that means, though, is that today, in the same way that we collaborate with colleagues, like we have colleagues and we work with teams, and ambitious projects take big teams to, I mean, not big in the sense of thousands of people, but you need a cohesive team to accomplish something big together. I think in the future, it'll be that, take an example of an engineer. I think a software engineer will become more of a software architect. They have this AI workforce at their disposal. And the same thing will be true for other areas of knowledge work, where we kind of become architects that manage an AI workforce. The thing that will still be really important is asking the right questions, because basically if you have a really competent AI system, it will do more or less what you ask it to do. The challenge will be, how do you pick the right problems to work on? How do you pick the right questions? Which, by the way, that is the whole challenge today with starting a company or pursuing a career in research. The fundamental thing to ask is like, what is the right problem to solve? And then you also have to then execute it, right? So you have to put in a lot of work to execute it. And imagine in the future, most of the burden will be on asking the right questions and designing them projects and problems correctly. And the execution will be done by an AI workforce for you. I think that's roughly the paradigm.
I'm kind of curious about people's perspectives on the narratives of AGI, ASI, so artificial superintelligence. Yeah. And I think the question would be, do people think that this is the existing trajectory, the path towards creating this sort of utopia, this unended progress? Or do people view the bottlenecks of that? So I guess the question would be, are we missing something? So raise your hand if you think we are missing something on this path. And then keep your hand down if you think it's no, we just have to keep scaling. Yeah. Okay, so it's kind of a mix.
So how do you feel about superintelligence versus AGI versus all these things?
Honestly, I feel like I became an ASI believer, AGI skeptic to some degree.
Right.
Where it's we've been creating ASIs in specific domains for years. It's here's a chess ASI, a Go ASI. I think the generality of the systems is still not quite what we need to say this is a drop-in replacement for a person. So that's why I say AGI has had perhaps more of a difficulty. I think there's a brute force towards AGI where you're just collect every task that a human might do, and then you can optimize against it. But yeah, I think human level performance, when you can evaluate a task well, is just a baseline you can blow past.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I'm not a believer in the term AGI, but you convinced me that ASI is actually a term worth holding on to.
Yep.
So I appreciate that.
We don't play